Yes, sir. And I'll turn it over to Parliamentarian Duncan to do that. I have the roll call on the screen.
Chair Stevens.
Present.
Regent Bogard.
Present.
Dr. Castle.
Present.
Secretary Fletcher. She's here. Regent Fletcher.
She had to step away for a minute, I think.
Okay. Regent Hamilton. Regent Herding.
Here.
Regent Martin.
Here.
Dr. Young.
Present.
We have a quorum. We may proceed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is approval of the last presidential search committee meeting minutes, excuse me.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
So we can do that by consensus, right, Pam?
That is correct. If there are no objections, the minutes are passed.
Thank you. Next item, Hannah?
Yes, sir. The next item is the charge to the committee. We reviewed this at our first meeting last time, but I do want to bring it up and have everyone look at it again. I did not receive any feedback about changing the charge, so it will stand as written. And this will guide our work moving forward. It's posted there for anyone who may need to read it again. And freshen up on what our or what the committee's responsibilities are moving forward.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none. Next item. Okay. That's Pam. All right.
Yes. So the next item are the confidentiality statements. They are open to be signed. If you have not signed them, we need them signed before you will be given any access to any of the information processed or candidates. So if you have not done so, please make sure that those are signed and returned.
Yeah, Pam, if you would send those a reminder, please.
Yes, I think one went out today, actually.
Right. Thank you, ma'am.
And then the next item, I believe we can turn it over to our consultants, and they're going to walk us through the search process and some specific elements of that process.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Hannah, and greetings, everyone. We're so pleased to be with you. This is our first meeting with you. We look forward to others, very successful meetings. We do have in place a recommended search timeline. If we go through that timeline, it actually will demonstrate the steps that are taken to make this an open and fair and successful search. We do begin actually with listening sessions, and thanks to your supporting staff, we will, after we listen to you about what you expect to see in your new president, we will be having listening sessions with many groups and several individuals. That starts on this Monday. And we are really looking forward to that. With these listening sessions, we're good. AG Research is really good for taking a lot of confidential notes, but the leadership advertisement that you will eventually see and review and approve, I guess along with your board, but that actually grows for the most part, 1/3 of it especially, directly from listening to individuals. And we don't make anything up. We rarely revisit anything that we've done in the past, unless it absolutely represents you, of course. But you will see that the first third, perhaps, of your leadership advertisement will be devoted to a little bit of background, just enough to invite an applicant to consider taking a look. The next third really will be what we have heard. These are the expectations, the attributes, qualifications being sought. And then finally, how do you do it? How do we apply? Or how do I make a nomination? So that grows from the groups that we're going to be talking with. The cabinet members will speak with us, we hope. Other members of your board who are not serving on the search committee, the presidents, the faculty senate, other individuals, perhaps from the council and your own chamber. So that is in good order for all of next week. Then you will expect to see your draft. The board will expect to see the draft. And we hope to launch the search certainly by the third week in June. Typically, a search will last 6 to 8 weeks. We are suggesting a little past mid-June, perhaps to mid-August. That's what we are suggesting, but we know the timeline belongs to your co-chairs and to you. So we'll follow as closely as possible to what your expectations are. Then after the applications are received, and they are received in a confidential portal, we do work with a researcher assigned to this team, an AGB search researcher, who will receive all of the applications and post them by date. We don't put anything in order. You see everything, and as it arrives, that's how it will be posted. You will see and receive directions on accessing all of those applications before the end of August. And at that point, you will be going through all of them. Brianna, this is part of the hard part. You're actually going to be selecting among many of these very fine professionals, those individuals you believe merit being a semifinalist. You will meet these individuals, you will interview them, we will work on questions, the kinds of questions that should be asked of these individuals. And I suspect that these interviews will be virtual. You should know that we've been doing a lot virtually, and it has been quite successful with our searches. If you wish to ask us about those searches, you may. By the way, if you wish to ask about our background in any fashion, you may do that also. And then after you interview these semifinalists, finalists will emerge, and then there's a process that will belong to you. I'm not quite certain what you will do with between the search committee and the search committee recommending to the board the individuals to be interviewed and probably visit. So I think that along with some other particulars that we'll get to in another part of the agenda is the walkthrough. Jim, what did I miss?
Yeah, well, I think you covered it well, but I would, even though we'll be listening to many, it'll be the responsibility of this search committee to really decide what we're going to have the board review and make available to the country and beyond. So all this input, you are the powerful group, and you will be the ones that will have to make the selection and the recommendation. So you have a very important role, and we would hope that we would have a complete consensus with the search committee and then the support of the board.
So, any questions, Mr. Chair or others?
Regent Herding does have a question.
Just real quick, in your past experience, how many finalists do you normally see being put forward to the full board? Is it 3? Is it 2? Is it 5? Or what do you normally like to see?
Well, I think the board will tell us how many they wish to see. Typically, in an unranked fashion, it is 3. Typically.
Could be 4, but I wouldn't recommend 2, because then if one person, for any reason, seems to pull out, then the decision's almost made. 3 or 4.
And Dr. Castle has a question.
Yep, you may have said it, I might have missed it, but I was looking for some sort of qualification of candidates that come in. In other words, those that don't meet the minimums, are you calling those from the group we're going to see, or how does that work?
Well, once the minimums are identified by you, and they will be in the leadership advertisement as well, We typically want our search committee to see everyone. So that means that we're not going to group them for you. The search firm is not going to take away your responsibility for looking at every individual. That doesn't mean you're going to, as you review documentation, that doesn't mean you're going to spend an hour on a person perhaps who does not meet minimum qualifications. But it just seems best to us that you see everyone. Jim always uses the example, suppose the governor's nephew applies. We don't know who the governor's nephew is, but you may. That doesn't mean the governor's nephew gets any special treatment, but at least you're able to feel that you put eyes on everyone's application. Now, if you want that changed, if the co-chairs decide that's not a good idea, in the past, we have done some grouping, but it doesn't make us feel comfortable. We want you to see everyone. Does that help, Dr. Castle?
It helps. I'm just accustomed to seeing when we have minimums posted, there are always inevitably people who will apply who don't meet a minimum education requirement, experience, or some other. And so I just wanted to make sure I understood what group of individuals we were going to see. And I think I heard it, all of them.
Well, you decide. It's going to be up to you too. We can do that.
But by the way, one criticism when we were created 12, 15 years ago, one of the things that the trustees talked about is that they didn't want the search firm picking their next person. So we've tried to really work hard to make sure we'll bring good candidates and we will know people and help build the pool. But our group does not want to be accused of trying to name somebody that's been a part of our organization somehow to the position. So we're over, but we'll rank them, not rank them, but we'll put them in sections if you want us to. It'll be pretty obvious, and the ones that don't count will get just a moment's attention probably. And also, I think it's more important to be open with public institutions, and so probably ought to look at them all.
I see hands, but I don't know who was first.
Dr. Young was first, and then Regent Fletcher.
Thanks. I was just curious, you are going to have your different listening sessions. Will we as a committee know what's coming out of those sessions? Will you group them in themes, characteristics or attributes that you're hearing and share those with us? Or how will that work?
Well, I'll take a first crack at that. You will know the kinds of thoughts that were identified and emerged, because that's probably exactly what is going to be in the leadership advertisement. I hope that helped. We take notes. We promise no attribution. And if it's something that you want to see, the notes are in clauses and phrases and sentences, things that we can use. But if it's something that the co-chairs decide they would like to see, we can somehow abridge them and take away names and groups.
And I'm sorry. Prior to going any further, I would like to note that Regent Hamilton has arrived, and co-chair Whitten is here as well. So for the record, both of them are here.
President Young, you were going to add?
Just was going to say, so for the most part, you all will be the ones seeing that information, and then that will help inform how you share attributes with us in terms of what will be put out or advertised.
I think that's right.
But we won't see that information, correct? Other than in the actual advertisement.
Normally, but again.
Okay. That's fine. I'm just curious. That's fine with me. Thank you.
Okay.
Wendy, you had a question?
More of a comment, I guess. I think it is a good idea that we see all of the candidates, but I would be okay with a little bit of a screening process where someone, even if it's just a couple members of this committee, were able to go through those and kind of filter out the ones that don't meet minimum requirements so that we're not bogging everybody's inboxes down with, 14 or 15 candidates and 10 of them don't meet.
Okay, so keep in mind, please, Regent Fletcher, we work for you. We know that. So I think it would be easier, instead of taking any committee members' time, unless they want to, for us to simply decide minimum requirements. And I suspect there won't be a long list of them, but if individuals do not meet minimum requirements, we will put them in a folder or separate them. So you'll still see the application, but we'll separate them out.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Hannah, you had a question?
Yes, sir. And not necessarily a question, just a comment. The feedback, of course, is going to come directly to Janice and Jim in terms of the individual calls and team calls they're going to be doing. But we also have established the survey that I worked with Janice and Jim on to set up with assistance from our staff at the system office. That survey went out to all faculty and staff today on behalf of Chair Stevens, and we will continue to circulate that survey. The results of that survey will go into the portal for Janice and Jim to log on to and see all of the unfiltered results. I am sure if this committee or perhaps the co-chairs wanted to have access to that portal to log in and see the results from the survey, if the committee finds that appropriate, we could set that up. But again, that's going to be kind of the third option for feedback. And keep in mind, though, there may be hundreds of responses. I'm not sure, how many will complete that, but it will be there for feedback as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Janice, I would like to have the candidates to present a very brief introduction, a 3 to 5 minute video. I want to try to get, as they come up, the candidates that apply for the job, so that we can put a name with a face type of situation. Is that appropriate?
I think I'm going to turn to Pam, but I don't know if you want to put a name with a face. And with all the candidates, we're looking at, I don't know that they'll be willing to do that. We'll have to really invite their permission. With the semifinalists, yes.
Yes, I think that would be more appropriate, not for just the initial application process. James Lee.
If you recall, Janice and Jim indicated that part of this process will be implicit bias training, which we will be conducting with all of the search committee members. Now, that's just a fancy way of saying that your life experience has made you like strawberry jam over grape jelly or something to that effect. And when you have cues such as videos or other types of visual cues, then sometimes that preference overcomes what is showing on paper. So it is always best practice to wait until you have selected your semifinalists to actually put those names and faces together.
This is Barry. I think once we develop and have hard stop minimum requirements, I feel like it's fine for you guys to filter those out. And if we want to look at those, if an individual wants to look at those, that's fine. But as far as bringing back to the committee, if they don't meet minimum requirements, we shouldn't even be considering them. So we should really spend our time looking at the other candidates. Secondly, I think if we could just have a summation of the information you're gathering from the town halls and the surveys, that would be good, just to have some kind of a summation. We don't have to look at all the results, but from your all's perspective, kind of a summary. And third, I don't think we need to have videos from everybody that applies.
All right, sir. Regent Fletcher, is your hand still up? Oh. No.
Not purposely.
Okay.
Go ahead, Janice.
Okay, well, I think if no one has, if there aren't any more questions, we've been talking about minimum requirements. We need to know what they are. And that's what I hope we can talk about all together. On the agenda does include some discussion with all of you. We need to know what you think are the current challenges and the attributes you want to see, and why anyone would really want to be in leadership. So those are the questions we want to answer. And I think those are similar questions are on the survey that Hannah referenced.
Now,
I think
Regent Fletcher does have her.
Yeah, we did make a decision as board recently that we would require the terminal degree. So an earned doctorate is an absolute requirement.
so that is one minimum. Okay, and the earned doctorate or terminal degree also would include an MFA, that's a terminal, a JD, that's a terminal degree. Yes?
Well, I will say that there is a policy, and we will provide it to you. It requires an earned doctorate, and it could be any doctorate. It's not just a terminal degree. So it could be a PhD, an EDD, a JD, whatever doctoral degrees are out there, a doctorate of nursing, any of those are permissible.
I'm going to say something, Regent Fletcher and others. Jim is going to say, they'll say that, but I'm going to say it anyway. I just want you to know that, yes, that will be respected. And I actually, thanks to Hannah, I was able to listen to your last meeting, at least from where I was. So I was listening. I was a member of the public. Suppose someone, let me think of some name. Barack Obama. He doesn't have a doctorate. He's pretty good in leadership, or somebody else. I want to be political, but suppose he applied.
Well, he has a Juris Doctor, so that would count.
Okay, found the wrong person. You're so smart, Pam. Okay, so I need someone else.
Hey,
But
Janice.
but you know what I'm saying.
Janice, we've gone through this in
Okay.
one of our board meetings, so I think we got to stick pretty much to a doctorate to stay with the current theme that we're looking for.
Okay.
And I exactly know where you're going because we've gone there, and we've explored that field. But I think we really need to focus on finding somebody that has that doctorate degree, but with the emphasis in business, workforce development. I think we have a good backbone of what we're looking for, don't we? We've developed that.
Good.
Do you have that?
I understand where you're headed.
Yeah.
We do.
And it must be an academic degree. It must be earned. Okay.
Didn't we develop a guideline kind of that we were looking for, Pam?
So-
We had one for the interim. We have not created one for the permanent position.
I really think the interim one is pretty good. We need to look at that and explore, right? As far as the qualifications that we're looking for.
Oh, we need more of those too. We've got that about the terminal degree, but we need to have thinking now or a little bit later in the meeting about the other characteristics that'll be important for success.
I mean,
Obviously,
I remember we came up with some guidelines initially when our current president left of what we were looking for. And we've got those somewhere.
Okay.
So let me interject if I can. There was a job profile that was developed for the interim search, and we can provide that to Janice and Jim for their review. I think they may have it already, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And then the policy that we're talking about is Board Policy 1.5. And I've put in the chat the 3 main qualifications or requirements that policy will require. And so basically it is an earned doctoral degree from an accredited institution of higher education. Experience to include a sufficient number of years that would provide time to learn and improve upon the leadership skills necessary to lead a complex system of colleges, providing a wide spectrum of general education, technical training, and workforce education. And then it cites to the statute KRS 164.003 to E, which sets forth the legislative criteria or mission of KCTCS, which are the 3 prongs that are above: general education, workforce training, and lifelong learning or remedial education.
I'm
Did
hearing.
you say that you
probably
put
want
that
that
in the
included.
chat? I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I don't see it in the chat.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't press the arrow.
Okay, that was my question. Sorry, Brianna, thanks.
So there it is in the chat, and that baby White had those questions, but there it is.
Okay, those three areas, are they minimum qualifications? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yes.
These are minimum.
Could you send them to me?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Okay.
Janice, if you will remember, we discussed in our first meeting, because if we had changed, we were trying to follow the policy that the board has already in place. And Pam advised us if we change that to go more, thing is we'd have to have a special board meeting, revisit the whole item. And so we thought it'd be best for this search to continue with the present criteria we have. Is that correct, Pam?
Good.
I do recall
Yes,
that.
that's correct. The policy is not very old. It's about 1.5 to 2 years old. And so there were concerns about the board looking as if it is changing policy for specific reasons. And so they wanted to avoid that.
Okay.
Just checking, an MD would qualify. It's amazing we get MDs in all of our searches.
Now,
Okay.
They sometimes spread
doctoral degree.
Yeah.
Any doctoral degree.
Thanks. All clear.
Very good.
Okay, so should we just go very quickly through a communication plan? No, no, you don't need to suffer with the communication plan. Know that we have a draft in place. It will be sent to the chair and supportive staff to look over, really hoping that your own communications team or individual will look at it too. But basically, there are 3 areas that we want to consider to advance our leadership advertisement. One is, of course, in the print or electronic arena. Print is probably going to be kind of costly these days. We are abstemious, and we've found that that the electronic postings receive just as much attention as the print. If we were to go to print, we probably would want to go with the Community College Daily or the Chronicle of Higher Education. Those prices probably, we probably should not do that. They're very, very costly. So that's one. We are looking at, and I'll just name these very quickly, in the event you think the ad should be placed in another publication. Is that okay to do, Chair? Co-chairs?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll go quickly. We are looking at the American Association for Adult and Continuing Education, the American Conference of Academic Deans, Community College Daily, Diverse Issues in Higher Education, Hispanic Outlook on Higher Education, Inside Higher Education, the Journal of Blacks in Higher Education, LinkedIn, the Chronicle of Higher Education, and Women in Higher Education. That's where we would like to place electronic postings. The second part of what we—
Janice, I'm sorry, this is Brianna, co-chair, and I do apologize. I'm having technical difficulties with my camera, so I'm sorry I'm not on screen. But did you say that the Chronicle is off limits even in electronic? It's too pricey?
No.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I think I might have misunderstood. You said in print it's too pricey.
It really is. Although we love it because there's your logo and the entire ad, and people see it, and people still do read the Chronicle, the paper form. But
every day.
Yes. So, I don't know. It would be the ad that we're envisioning right now. Jim and I thought, well, this is going to be a $7,000 ad in print.
And
So,
decide you want,
although,
you can certainly do it. We just want to be sensitive about costs, but that will tell the world about your institution. And there are individuals that read the Chronicle as it is, and there just might be some people that would be very thoughtful and look at that and come up with a nomination. So it is something for you to consider.
The second part of what we do typically is write to, call, contact leadership and membership for about 35 organizations. Among them, it's everything from the Alliance for Equity in Higher Education and the American Association of State Colleges and Universities to alphabetically the Southern Regional Education Board. So there are about 30 organizations. Instead of me naming them, if in fact you're wondering, gee, I wonder if they're going to contact so-and-so, let us know. I'll see if it's on the list. And if it's not on the list and you think we should make that contact, we will. And then finally, we know that the system office will has an established website for the search. We'd like to see that kind of website be a first stop for individuals who are considering application. Of course, they could explore the entire website, but it's so smart to have something devoted only to the search. And then if there's something that they want to dig into a little more deeply, financials or the entire strategic plan or something, they can do that. But at least they can take a first glance, Reader's Digest kind of version of what our system looks like. So are there any questions on that?
I would just add to that quickly that we probably want to put up our public data, right? Maybe a link to our dashboards that are publicly facing, just to kind of really give them a snapshot. Here's what enrollment looks like. Here's what financials look like. Here's, all the different schools broken down. I can see that being on a presidential search page so that they can really take a look.
Mm-hmm. And that's where on that presidential search page, typically, again, we work for you, but typically you will find the members of the search committee, probably a link to the board page. We'll also have, of course, the leadership advertisement. And we like to have what is called the institutional profile. And that's, Regent Fletcher, what you're talking about. In that profile, that's where that would be listed, a link to the mission, all of those things, including some background on the region and the city in which this individual will be living. So that's the institutional profile. I think we probably have to do some work on it, but you're right. Dashboard would be there.
My fear in all this is that we get someone who sees system president kind of job, not realizing how really geographically challenged that the system is, literally all corners of the state and everything in between, and not realizing that we are 16 individually accredited colleges that all have their own unique, personalities, so to speak. And I think it would be unfair for someone to come in and not really understand that before they even applied.
Well, there'd be a reference to that in the advertisement, and that is exactly the kind of information that should be on the institutional profile that is on the search page.
Having
Absolutely.
been
And we'll
served,
talk to people.
having served as a chancellor in 2 states, you need a person with very high energy, kind of a person, I would think, to your decision, who gets out, meets people, visits the campuses, and is really involved. And so it's not sit in the office job, in the way I see it anyway.
Well, co-chairs. I think we've completed that part for us.
Pam, you had a question?
This might not be the place to bring it up, but I'm wondering if in the, when we advise them, I think we're going to talk about the Huron Project and Senate Joint Resolution 98 with them. Is there a potential for discussing with the candidates or somehow asking the candidates about the post-COVID 19 higher education environment and that sort of thing? I feel like those are the main challenges, legislative, fiscal in many respects, which is what the Huron Project is about, and COVID-19 and the changes in higher education after the pandemic. And I'm just wondering how all of that fits in to developing this profile and job description.
Pam, can I ask a question while they're thinking? Because I see the wheels turning there for Janice.
Yes. Yeah.
Are you asking that because we really want a change manager who's going to be able to bring us up to speed post-COVID? Are you talking about someone who has worked through that process so that we're not getting someone who has no experience with the changes that have happened since? Like, I'm trying to get a sense of what you're really asking there.
Well, I think I'm asking if someone would be able to rise to those challenges and meet those challenges, someone who would be able either to have already successfully navigated what is a downturn in enrollment, a movement toward remote education, potentially a lack of need for brick and mortar, all of those things that higher education has been dealing with since the pandemic began, altering and revising to a remote workforce as well as student population, and then coming back to what is I wouldn't say the same environment. It is a completely different environment. And how do you move that forward? I think that is a big question that we will want to have, the president will need to address. I mean, the 2 presidents who are on here right now, I think that they would say, and I'm not putting words in their mouths, and please jump in here, that there is a different feel, there are different challenges, both in the workplace and the classroom, than there were back before 2019 hit or 2020.
Well, I think you described
that's what
some
we're
of the
asking.
challenges. Yes.
Hannah?
Not to get us off topic here, but I did want to note for everyone that I put in on board the interim attributes document that I believe it was Regent Martin referenced earlier. So that is now located in onboard under your listening session portion, and we've shared that with Janice and Jim. I do think that document will certainly need refining and perhaps condensing as we move along, but if you want to take a look at that. And just to add to the conversation about Pam's questions, to me, that those kinds of questions seem to almost be like an interview question rather than something that is put into a minimum requirement or something like that. But again, that's just my take on it.
I think that leads back to the overall personality or work philosophy that the candidates have. I think that goes back to those fundamental values. I know what you're getting at, Pam. We need somebody that will pull us out of the doldrums of the COVID effects and bring some energy back to the table and have people back engaged in, education and workforce development. That's what you're getting at, right?
Yes, because we have really a perfect storm of even before COVID, enrollment was declining, not just in Kentucky, but everywhere. And now we've got declining enrollments based on regular demographics as well as COVID-19 taking people kind of out of life, so to speak. We have workplace challenges where people have kind of gotten out of the habit of peopling during COVID. And then all of that is going on while we're doing the Huron Project, while we're dealing with Senate Joint Resolution 98. So I do think we need someone who has the capacity to see and foresee challenges that are out there.
Dr. Young or Dr. Castle, you have anything to comment?
Yeah, I think Pam's exactly right in terms of what you want, but I'm not sure that I could give you a good idea how to frame that in something like this. I mean, when I was looking for this position, the data was out there, but I can tell you, I went and searched a lot further than what was available on the website, what was available on a profile, and talking to different people. So it's almost one of those, you want to open the door to invite people in, but you want to be really, really cognizant of what you're asking them once you've made that choice to bring them in. And so I don't know, I think you're in a really, really tough spot, but anybody that's looking for this position is going to be a pretty high caliber individual, and they're going to have done their homework, or I don't think they're going to get far enough for you to even take a look at them. Just my thoughts.
Dr. Young?
Well said, Dr. Castle. Thank you.
Wendy?
I think it could be as simple as just the wording of the invitation to apply. We're looking for an energetic, dynamic change agent who can bring the system post-COVID into, the current environment of online learning, remote working. I think that's just a couple of sentences in the invitation to apply. I don't think that has to be, in the list of essential characteristics of the candidate. I think it just needs to be expressed in some way that they know, hey, if you've not worked in 15 years, this is probably not the job for you to apply for, or if you haven't worked in the last 5 or 6 years, this is probably not the job for you to apply for. So I think that can be very simply done without muddying up the job description or, putting that on an essential characteristics list. That's just a simple couple of sentences in an ad, in my opinion.
Jim?
I'd just remind us all that one of the tasks of the search committee, and we'll help to the degree that you'd like us to, is developing that 8 or 10 questions that you're going to be asking all of the semifinalists. And I think a lot of thought needs to be given into that, and you'll get a lot of indication about what they've done in the past and all of that from those good questions. In addition to telling them as much as we can in the advertisement about the challenges. And when we get to that question of challenges from you, you've just stated many of them. They're kind of national challenges, but also Kentucky challenges. So your questions, a lot of time will need to be spent on getting the right questions so that we can delve into that. Then in our reference checking, once we kind of know where you're headed, we can, in our reference checking, be asking about those experiences too that might lead them to do the kind of leadership you're talking about.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other committee members have any questions before we go on with Janice?
I have a question about your reference checking. How deep do you do your reference checking?
We actually
What
have,
different angle? I'm sorry.
we have 3 levels of reference checking that you might be interested in learning. First, part of the application will require, for a complete application, for the individual to list 5 references. You're accustomed to that. We really respect that. We don't think it's a waste of time. We get a lot of information out of those 5 people that person may list. And we try to call everyone. Jim and I do this ourselves. So that's the first level. And of course, if a person is selected as a semifinalist, that's when we will check those listed references. At the same time, we will also ask permission of the semifinalists to check social media, Nexus, and one other area which really looks at legal documents, Lexis, I guess it's called. There's Nexus, Lexis, and we will we'll do that background, and we'll do as well not only the social media check, but a first level Google or other program check, just background to see just what is there. Then at the finalist level, a very deep, another company will do this, but a very deep background check is done on finances and academic credentials, legal issues, that kind of thing.
Kind of a validation of their credentials.
Yes, for certain.
And a financial background?
Yes. That's only on the finalists, though.
Yeah, no, I know.
And they give us permission, of course, to do that. We don't pursue anything without them signing off.
Also, Chair, also, when you get to the final 4 or 3 that'll be public, then you can do some more calling of people we know, and it's not going to affect the confidentiality of the search.
I think that's where I was going with, because I've been in some presidential searches that we found some really valuable information by talking to common contacts that we would not have had.
Mm-hmm.
Well, also, if a person does not list, for instance, her direct report on the reference list, that would be an off-list check for us.
Okay.
And what you called common, I sometimes if it's a smaller community, we'll call the mayor, we'll call the athletic director, we'll talk with the faculty senate leader if that person isn't listed. So those are the off-list kind of things
that we're looking for. There'll be some commonalities there from
Mm-hmm. A question,
conventions, whatever, or common boards.
A question that we always ask. This will be a high-profile position in Kentucky. Everybody's going to know about this. Is there anything in your background that's going to be embarrassing to the board or you personally that we need to know about? I ask them that bluntly. And sometimes they will say, well, you know, I did sign, I signed was a reference for my nephew to build a house, and somehow that did not go well. And they sometimes tell you that. Sometimes a health thing will come up, and all of that, of course, we ask permission to talk to the board about it. But sometimes on those reference checks, they will say, you were involved in the person coming. Was there anything in that person coming or that background? And sometimes they'll say, yes, you ought to check the last place. And of course, that can be done at a certain point. It's not a perfect system, but we work hard at it because remember, first things get the right person. The second thing, have them be successful. And we don't want to have any surprises for you or us.
Well, Jimmy, you remember this in education. I've had a couple of incidents where I'm interviewing principals for positions. If you got any background problems, know and find out later that 3 years ago or 5 years ago, they got a DUI.
Yes.
And you know, basically is that's the things you need to just encourage them, I guess, disclose everything because if you've got any records of anything is in the courts anymore, it'll come out. what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I want to go back to Pam's the concern that she expressed. We talk to everyone. We try to talk to truly everyone, but it's usually 80 to 90%. And that's the kind of thing that we will ask also. What are you thinking in this area? What has been your experience in the last 2 or 3 years? So just to get them thinking without revealing anything as well about what might be coming.
Wendy had a question.
Oh.
Janice, in reference, I know that we talked a lot about the feedback from the community, the academy, but you and I have talked with Hannah about the workforce development and the occupational part of it and I know that Hannah's given you a lot of information with some contacts, the Chamber of Workforce Development or so, and I think it's very important that, as I emphasized before, that we hear from those people because they're very much interested in the leadership going forth of KCTCS.
All right, sir. Good. All right. So, Pam, do we have time to actually do, taking a lot of notes here already, but do we have time to really go into the listening session?
I think so. If the board members or the committee members are willing to remain, we can proceed.
Okay, so 3 questions. Current challenges as you see it, and don't worry about being redundant. We want to hear it all. More about the attributes that you expect to see, the qualities in the president, and what makes KCTCS special? Why would someone want to come? And you could talk about these things in any order, and we'll just sort it all out. Old professor here, so don't make me call on you. I'm going to. So, Chair.
All right,
Chair,
I'll go first. Read those out again. First one. Read them all 3 out again.
Current challenges.
Student enrollment.
Okay.
Academic expectations. Bang for the bucks. Meaning that are we getting the most for our money? The implementation of a lot of recommendations that are positive in the Huron report. We'll go to number 2 then.
Attributes.
Honesty. The ability to communicate, the ability to work the crowd, to know the climate, be able to work with legislators, be able to make tough decisions. Don't be afraid to say no. Don't be afraid if you do make a mistake, admit your mistake and move on with the desire that you're leading an institution that is the best for the money and the best for the future of the state of Kentucky.
Very good.
You dropped right into why would anyone want to or choose to lead the system at this time? And that is best for them.
Yeah, I think it's the challenge. You've got to care about people. You've got to care about students. You've got to have a passion for your job. And you've got to want to reach out, take advice from other people, but be able to stand on your own 2 feet and make tough decisions. Thank you.
So I'm hearing you want a person. I just want to make sure that is collegial, listens to people, seeks advice, but knows when to make a decision.
Yes, and knows when to keep their mouth shut.
Does that go in the list of attributes?
Well, I think that's just,
That would get a lot of attention. I like that.
there's this, yeah. As an old saying, my dad told me a long time ago, son, a smart man admits his mistakes, a fool never does. So, the ability to, and you'll have disappointments, but to regroup, refocus, and move on. Wendy, I think you're up next.
I would add to that list, be willing to fail fast, but fail forward. However you want to categorize that, because we don't expect anyone's going to come in here and not make any mistakes as they try to navigate this landmine, this minefield of data and all of the issues that are going on right now. I would also add to that list legislative prowess, because we know that the politics surrounding this system are tedious but important. And I think you're going to have someone who is not only a good communicator, but able to be a good communicator within the political environment of Kentucky, which I think is a challenge that is unique. And I'm sure other states probably say that too. But we heard from one of our previous upper level employees that they'd never experienced politics like they did in Kentucky and never thought that it would affect their particular job. And it absolutely did. And so I just think legislative prowess needs to be added to that attributes list. I think the change agent characteristics definitely needs to be part of their leadership package. I think they need to be an assertive communicator, but also a very good active listener. And I would think that they're going to have courage. We talked about courage as an attribute in one of our meetings a few meetings back. I think it was Regent Cox that brought that up. And I think that it's its own characteristic to be a courageous leader. And I think that is what we are really looking for, because we all understand that there are very big changes coming and that we need to be out ahead of those. And we're going to have someone who can be a courageous leader, who's not afraid to change what's always been done to get us up to speed with what's coming.
Well, with the change that you're referencing, to be a change agent, one needs to know what needs to be changed. Is that related to the Huron study and what the board will do with that?
Most likely, yes, but even more so related to what the legislature may do with KCTCS and how they may navigate if that Senate Joint Resolution passes as we, or gets implemented as we expect it will, how they're going to navigate very serious changes that are coming down the pipeline.
Keith?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a number of great comments. One of the ones that I had is that person in that position really needs to have an eye and a focus on industry as well, public and private companies, because, obviously all of these men and women who are at our institution are looking to be educated so that they can get out and have good jobs. So just making sure that they, keep that in the back of their minds to make sure companies are involved to help maybe develop and internships for these men and women as well. So just want to throw that out there as an additional piece.
Thank you. Brianna?
Yes, Janice and Jim, I have quite a few actually to add. I appreciate all the great comments as well. But looking more at the faculty and staff side under attributes, I know that the faculty and staff historically kind of see the office of KCTCS president as something that is not, or maybe someone who necessarily doesn't always see them. So someone who has a willingness to make faculty and staff across all 16 colleges feel seen. That's important to one of the groups that I represent, both groups actually. I think Jimmy Lee said honesty, but I'd also like a progressive visionary, not somebody who waits for the data to roll in, but that sees something going wrong and is willing to act in time to fix those issues. And, not let the slow wheels of academia like hold them back. And inspirational is also an attribute. At this point where we are now, we need that more than ever, I would actually move that to the very top of the list. Someone who walks in the room and they are the president of KCTCS, and that goes for all stakeholders of our institution. That person needs to be able to walk in a room and be acknowledged as such. And then current challenges, I would also add the quality assurance that's going on with the revamp of the online education, so that they have a background in that. And, our culture as well. We've had several conversations about that in meetings past, and that culture, it is shifting, it is better. But somebody who is, very in tune to not only the system office culture, but the culture of all of the colleges.
Okay.
Let me see.
Barry, you got any questions? Got any comments?
You guys hit on, on most of the stuff that we really need, but I really feel like it boils down to we're looking for kind of a superstar, somebody that can walk in and evaluate what we have and expand on the attributes, the assets that we have, and the value that we have to the state, not only as an academic force, but at workforce development. Those are the two keys. And when the legislative bodies talk about KCTC, they ought to think about education and workforce development and at its epitome. And I really think that we need somebody that can lead us to that aspect. And that means that they do need to have not only the academic background, but also some kind of a twang of entrepreneurship to their personality. To be able to talk to the CEOs of these companies that we're developing their workforce for. So when, Stivers or Osborne or Bashir brings them in front of these employers, they're impressed with them. They know what they're looking for and say, we can do that. And it's not going to take us a year to develop that program. We're going to be more nimble. We're going to be more like a company that provides academics and workforce development, not an academic setting that just so happens to have workforce development as a byproduct. I think that's where we need to be to set the state on fire. And I think we have what it takes for that. And why would somebody want to leave their current job to take this job? Is because of that. Because that opportunity presents itself. Everybody's afraid of what the legislature is going to do to us. I think that what we need is to prove to the legislature that we're damn good at what we do and nobody else can do it better. And I think we need to have somebody that can elaborate on that in those terms.
Excellent. Thank you.
Dr. Young or Dr. Castle?
Well, I'll go first. I'm listening to all this, and I am really struck. I hope we're able to find someone like this because there's an awful lot of attributes there. I'm trying to think through this in some little other areas. I think maybe one of the big things I want is somebody who can have some common sense, understands what we do as our mission, and is ready and willing to go work on it. I think you have to be realistic with the limitations and the goals that we have, and that vision ought to reflect all that as well. And I also believe you can take this for what it's worth. Somebody better have an ego if they take this job, because it is a big job, and you better feel like you can do it. If you don't have that kind of feeling inside you to take it on, you're not going to do well at it. So, and I think all the rest of things people have touched on, those pieces I think are very important as well. But I believe that if you word it right and put out what we want, the people that you want will apply, and it'll be easy to weed out the ones that can't. And we shouldn't be quick to go, we're willing to take 70%. You know what I mean? If we don't find somebody that meets the minimum criteria we're talking about, then don't hire for the sake of putting them in a position of filling a hole.
Dr.
My 2
Young?
cents worth. Thanks.
I don't really have much to add. I think that what has been stated already is great. And I again agree with Dr. Castle. I think that this individual is going to need to be pretty dynamic in order to get the job done. I think I could share some things with you, but I think it's already been said. I would really like to see someone who understands, as Dr. Castle says, community college and our mission. I worry that sometimes we are so different that people are not really sure what to do with us. We don't quite fit in the high school, nor do we quite fit in the university model. And I think sometimes we're trying to be made to fit in one of those. And so somebody that really understands community college mission, I think is critical. And then finally, that they have 16 presidential colleagues with decades of experience that can help them do exactly what you all are asking them to do.
So Dr. Young and others, suppose an individual who understands workforce education, may be a graduate of a community college, but has only had experience in the university or 4-year setting. Will that person be welcome? Perhaps never taught in a community college, never taught or worked as an administrator in a community college, or would that person still be welcome?
The decision, of course, would not be completely up to me. I would be very, very concerned with that individual, simply because I have had experience with bringing in university personnel to the community college setting, and we have struggled. Not to say that that will happen in every case, but to me, a knowledge, preferably experience in the community college setting, is really a must.
Okay, but that's not a minimum requirement. Do you think that should be listed as a preference?
From my perspective, I'm one.
Co-chair?
And I appreciate Dr. Young and her perspective, and I thank you for sharing what you were thinking. At first I didn't know if you were really going to share, but I always appreciate and learn so much from what you say, and I do respect that opinion. However, I think that we would not just eliminate them based on the fact that they may not have any community college experience, because again, where we're headed is not where we've been. And I think that we need to look at a broader picture. We need to look at a broader candidate who may be able to bring other experience from industry or from workforce or from that entrepreneurial spirit. Someone, I always get accused of this is not being a business, right? This is academia. But I really think we need somebody who can kind of balance both and who absolutely respects the mission of community college, but doesn't necessarily have, I always say as an old nurse, I didn't have to muck bedpans on night shift to become a good nurse. And I don't think you have to be a community college president now to be a good community college president in the future. But I think you do have to have all those attributes and be able to apply that to the job at hand. So I would not say being a community college president needs to be a prerequisite at all. Just my opinion. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that would hamstring
Anyone
us.
else?
Jim, you had a question?
Yeah, just a point on that. What I'm hearing is an R1 research university is probably not the right preparation. But what about these wonderful regional publics that are 4-year and master's degree and serve some of the same students that community colleges do? Would that be, you don't have to decide now, but is that a kind of an application you'd welcome, as well as somebody that has really been in the community colleges alone? only.
Some of our mission is transfer credit, right? So we're preparing these students to not only get associate's degrees or certificates or other credentials, but we're preparing those students to move on to those four-year institutions. So I would think someone who has four-year experience, absolutely, four-year institution experience would absolutely be able to say, I'm familiar with the product that you're turning out, because we're dealing with those students every day. I absolutely think that someone in a four-year institution would be able, as long as they have the appreciation for community college and the differences and understand that that mission, you know, that's just one part of the mission. But again, that person's going to have industry and workforce. That's what we're being driven and pushed to really move to right now. And what the legislature and the public in general is saying, not everyone is choosing to go to a four-year institution anymore. How are we going to prepare these people? So if they're kind of, and I don't see it as a step down, I really see it as just a lateral move, because while four-year may focus on the bachelor's or even offer some master's, what community college does is so much broader than that. We serve such a bigger population and give so much more opportunity to people who maybe aren't looking for just, you know, that four-year degree. They've got to have an appreciation and an understanding of that. But I don't think being in a four-year institution is somehow limiting to them. And I think we really put ourselves in the wrong box when we say we are so different from all other higher ed that nobody outside of community college can understand us. That's not accurate, in my opinion.
Pam, you had a question?
I have a comment, so I'm going to pull you all back over to the policy that is your policy. And I'm not making a statement about qualifications or not. I'm making a statement about what the policy says about qualifications. And it does not necessarily lean toward or limit any particular type of experience. It simply says experience sufficient to learn and improve upon the leadership skills necessary to lead a complex system of colleges, providing a wide spectrum, etc. Or a variety of experience, a variety of experience that assists the president in developing an understanding. So it is the experience and not necessarily the limitation of what type of experience, but that is what the board is looking at for their requirements. So I would say you should always go back to your policy to say, what is the experience that we're looking for? And these are the two types of experiences here that are in the credentials and the qualifications. A type of experience that is sufficient to create a leader who can do this. Now, you might have differing opinions on what that means. Does that mean that it's community college? Does it mean it's 4-year? Does it mean it's someone out in the industry world who happens to have your doctoral degree? Maybe somebody has a doctorate in engineering and they are running a large industrial complex. Is that leadership? Is that experience sufficient to bring that leadership where you need it to be and lead this system? So I would just say, I would caution you to look always to your policy to say, you're looking at what those leadership and experience, what that experience gives to the leadership, and does that lead them to be able to run this system?
Thank you. Very helpful.
I'd like to hear a comment. We have a student Regent on there, so I would like to hear from her before we conclude. Ms. Bogart?
I concur with Mr. Martin. I believe that what he said was, I just kind of agree with him. I believe that whoever we choose, they should be able to know how to run a business. It's important that, because we are a business, and it's important that they are able to do that. So, and I believe that they should have community college experience.
All right. Joe, you got anything?
I don't think I can expand any more than what everyone's already said. I did jot down some notes earlier, and I did fill out the survey that was sent out to all the faculty and staff. I wish I would have kept a copy because I had some really good stuff in there. I can't remember it all now, but I think you've all touched on it. One thing I just want to say real quick is I would personally, as me, as a staff person, I would like someone, an attribute of someone people want to follow. You know, not just because they're in my chain of command and I have to, and I get a paycheck, but someone who walks in the room and I say, that's the kind of person I want leading this place. That's the kind of person I want leading me to make a difference. That's why we're here. We're here to make a difference. So that's really what I'm kind of looking for. So thank you, and thank you all for your comments. I thought they were great.
Janice, back to you, or Jim.
Okay, well, we actually have a lot of good information. The one thing I think we're still stumbling on a little bit, and I think we mentioned it earlier, and that is, if all goes as expected and as we've been directed, we're going to launch this search mid-June. That's going to be before legislative action, I think. Maybe before the board selects Huron study priorities, I'm not sure. But to what extent do you feel comfortable with us talking about, we know we need a change agent or someone's going to be able to lead this change, but they're going to be curious about what the change is. So how much can we talk about that? As we can figure it out, but
yeah, I have to refer to Pam or Hannah. I think we can talk about all that's public knowledge. Is what I'm saying is, you know, when you asked me some 6 weeks ago, when did I want to select the president, and I said yesterday.
Yeah.
So you know, I think that you know, the information is out there, unless. You know, I don't have any problem, but I'll let the board make a comment if they want to. Is that, you know, I'm in favor of that you gathering the information or so and presenting it to the board in their meeting in June, and let's get on with it. Hannah?
Sure. I think when you talk about this, you have to talk about the timelines associated with them. So we know that, of course, we're in the thick of Huron right now. And I do believe that there will be some recommendations made by the board at their June meeting, which is June 15th and 16th. So you will have that by then to at least know where that piece is moving.
That's right.
I think you absolutely have to talk to them about the Senate Joint Resolution 98. We expect to see that report and those recommendations to come possibly by October. At the very latest December. But I do want to caution just a note on that. Even what is produced by the Council on Post-Secondary Education in their report to the Legislative Research Commission, that report will still have to go through the legislative process and implementation. So what is recommended in that report may not be what it is ultimately adopted by our legislature. So even if there are, you know, there is some kind of recommendation to alter KCTCS, we can't be sure at that point that that's what will ultimately be done. And we would not know that until well into the end of the session in spring of 2024. So I think you just say that there is a report coming. We will know what that report looks like in the fall. We will not know how that is actually implemented until the spring.
Okay.
So can I add to what Hannah is saying as well? If our time frame goes in the way that we expect it, that individual that the board selects will actually be in place by the beginning of the legislative session. So it's imperative, in my opinion, for them to know that this is out there and that it is potentially something that they will have to day one begin to grapple with, because they will be the advocate on behalf of all of our staff, all of our faculty, all of our colleges with the legislators. And if they are not able to build that relationship very quickly, very solidly, then they will have difficulty being that advocate. And so I would say that it's imperative for us, for all of us, to make sure that this is first and foremost, not to scare someone away, to say this is a great challenge, a great opportunity. So we began with the original legislative findings that were set forth through the legislature that said basically by the year 2020, we will have two major research institutions, we will have regional colleges, and we will have a Kentucky and community and technical college system that does X, Y, and Z. Now, they are about to do, as you walk in, new president, new legislative findings. What do you want those legislative findings to be? To position KCTCS to be the premier community college system in the nation and to serve our students. Sorry, I didn't mean to get so wild.
Good, thank you.
Jim, do you have a question?
Yeah, just Mr. Chair, what I think I just heard makes it simpler to me. First, this new person is going to have to know what a UON report is and be ready to lead that. The board's deciding. The other question, it's their leadership, maybe an opportunity to help shape the future of the system. And it'll be up to them with the board and with all of you to give the kind of political push to this to turn out the way you want it to. And but the UON report, there'll be recommendations, and you better be prepared to be in harmony with them because they're going to be decided before you get there.
Correct. Any other questions for the consultant?
I do think that's going to be challenging, Jim, and that's such a great summary that you just gave. Because I think a lot of people, when they think they're walking into a leadership position, you know, of course, we want somebody who, as Brianna said, is a progressive visionary, and we want them to have a strategic plan, a thought about a strategic plan, and then be able to bring the group, the 16 presidents and the staff and the executive staff together to make what their vision for KCTCS is, but at the same time understanding some of this is already going to be kind of, it's in place, and these are the things that are going to have to be done moving forward. And you know, somebody who's going to be flexible enough to say, well, that's not really my vision for my leadership role. Do you know what I'm saying? They may come in with the preconceived notion that I'm going to walk in and I'm going to be the leader of this organization and it's going to be all my new ideas. That's not really going to be the case in this situation because of the timing of it all and what's happening politically. We're going to have to be a little bit ahead of that. So they're going to have to be able to walk in and take what we put on their plate and be able to work with it.
Yes.
We do want a visionary, but we also have some tasks at hand that they're going to have to manage.
Mm-hmm.
Great discussion. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Negotiator, innovator, and collaborator. I think that's what we're looking for. That can pull those three things together and work off the assets that we have. And our assets are our staff, our faculty, our students. I mean, we are a workforce engine, not only internally, but externally. You know, how many employees do we employ throughout the state? They walk in and they have an instant impact on this whole state. You know, from the legislator to the governor's office, all the way down to the mayor's office of the communities that we serve. I mean, I think we ought to be able to sell that job pretty easily. Even with, I mean, there's no job that doesn't have its challenges. It definitely has its challenges. But you know, one of the things that it's also helped is having the Huron report and being on the radar for the legislature, I mean, could have its advantages as well.
Opportunity.
So
Yeah.
I think that's what we need to feed off of, and not the fear that it can generate, because anything can generate fear. You've got to generate the positive attitude. That's why I said innovator, collaborator, negotiator. I mean, if they have those three things, they're going to make it.
Timing's perfect to be a leader.
I'm so curious, does anyone know how many of our legislators are alumni of one of the institutions?
I don't know, but I can tell you that I'm not an instructor, but I am a product of a community college, of Big Sandy, Prestonsburg Community College, and we're very intricately involved with Hazard Community College. And, you know, I don't have any interest because I'm not a doctorate, but I mean, I would love to lead organizations such as this because I've seen it from the ground up. And I think if we could find somebody that has that full appreciation of community colleges, I think they could pull it off.
I do know of at least a handful of legislators and a couple who are actually students right now who are going back and getting certificates or diplomas in something other than their initial career choice. So I know Bratcher is one of those. Yeah. I believe he's at E-Town, or is it E-Town? Yeah, because we talked to him about that during the session this year. So I do know there are a few of them that are actually taking classes or courses now. So that's a great question. We should research that. I'm sure Hannah and I can dig through their profiles and figure that out.
Good, thanks. Just curious. Well, co-chairs, next meeting?
Want to have the next meeting, say sometime in July, after you get the, you'll be at the board. We'll have a presentation at the board. We'll approve the advertisements and start rolling over to Hannah. What do you think? Sometime an update, maybe in sometime in July?
No.
I'm pulling up the timeline right now.
Oh.
I mean,
well, I'm sorry, I'm looking at it. I was just thinking these summer weeks are more difficult, but Jim and I are so big on search committees establishing some community among themselves. So yeah. Even an interim kind of meeting.
I was just thinking that we would probably have maybe depending on, and a lot of people be on vacation, not be able to be there, but you know, at least one, maybe a couple, but I'll let Hannah to look at that. So maybe sometime in July, that's like the second week in July, to get an update from you all, how it's going, this and that.
Okay. I think July at the latest. I think we can possibly have one at the end of June. Of course, we have our board meeting on the 15th and 16th, where we'll give an update and approve the leadership advertisement. But we can talk offline, Janice and Jim, and work schedules with the co-chairs, and then we will send out a date to everyone far in advance so we can make sure everyone can attend.
Yeah, and I think I think Brianna and I would really be interested in maybe a conversation with you and Jim and Hannah after you get the feedback from all the talking groups, this and that, is to hear that from us, so we could hear that from you all. Okay.
Hannah, you mentioned, Jimmy Lee, I'm just going to bring that up really quick. You mentioned that earlier that we would have access to that if requested, that Jimmy Lee and I could have that. So that would be great.
Yeah, I'll make that happen for you too.
Chair Stevens, no decision today, but you and your staff need to give some thought as to what, after it's launched, people will not bring it up first, but they'll want to know a little bit about compensation and so on. And do you have to list ranges, or at some point, my experience has been with ranges, they always pick the top. So maybe we need something to say how much you paid your last one, or something to just give a little ballpark. That won't be, and we don't negotiate that. That's up to the board. when you pick your person.
Yeah, I think that we can look at that package, Pam, correct?
Yeah.
We can look at that package and, you know, we can put some information out there so that you will have that if they come back. This is the minimum, and here's some of the fringe benefits that will go with it, is what I'm saying, type of situation.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. That'll be helpful.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none. Do I hear a motion? We adjourn.
So moved. Is Barry?
Barry.
Second.
All signify by raising your hands. And thank you all for attending. God bless you.
Thank you all. Nice to meet you. You guys have a good evening.
Thank you so
much.
much.
Thank you.